Welcome back to The Move, where vibing through the book 10 minutes at a time. I'm your host, Justin Koo, and in today's episode, we're talking about that one time in the Bible where God ran a speed dating service in modern-day Mesopotamia. If you're wondering, what in the heck are we talking about? Genesis chapter 24, verses 10 all the way to 67. My guest today is Pastor Kesia Rain. Pastor, I have a story, if you don't mind, if you're willing to hear kind of a fun story. And it's actually the story of how I met my wife. People who have been following my ministry for the last however many years know kind of the nuts and bolts of the story. But long story short, the way that I met my wife was actually at a speed dating event. It's one of those things where you get those long tables, there's guys on one side, girls on the other side. Everyone's wearing what I would describe as like a marathon bib where you have like a number because you don't know the people's names yet. And so we literally had 5 minutes to have a conversation with the other person, hence the name speed dating. A bell would actually ring and then you would swap partners, kind of a thing. And the idea was if you enjoyed the conversation, you would then write down the number of the person, the bib that they were wearing. You'd write down their number and you would hand in your list with your name on it and all the people that you were kind of curious or interested in to the organizers. And at the end of the event, the organizers would do like a matching kind of an idea where if you wrote down that person's number and the other person wrote down your number, then they would send you an email. You'd be able to get their contact information and you could then take it from there. And so Emily was the very first speed date that I had, and I was immediately enthralled. And long story short, 365 days later, we got married. But
What?
today, yeah, 100% speed dating to the T. We were this morning, and it's kind of fun because the coincidence of the recording of this episode is that you and I are experiencing Valentine's Day. And so it's kind of fun to reminisce on these stories and kind of our experiences, especially since that's the theme or it's one of the themes I want to explore in this passage. But when I called Emily to meet up for our first like real slow date, if you will, she didn't answer the phone because she was at the gym, which is, hey, a great indicator of someone taking care of herself. And so I left a voicemail. Would you be interested in hearing the voicemail that I left her in May? I think it was May 5, 2014.
You know I would.
All right. Here is the voicemail.
Hey, Emily, this is Justin. We met the other night at the thing on Saturday night. Anyways, I was just calling to see if you would have any time free this week and be interested in going out to eat or something like that. Anyways, give me a call back when you get the chance. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
So in the voicemail, I said that thing on Saturday night, because even at that time, even though we're on the other side of this experience, I was still very bashful to call it speed dating and to admit that this is how I met this individual. Because I don't know, maybe the connotation now is different, but back then, certainly. And I don't know, I felt self-conscious about the idea of even attending, much less meeting someone and then marrying them when that was our backstory. But that is actually how we met. And so that's the context when I read this chapter, when I see Abraham telling the servant, go find a wife, everything happens so fast. I think of how I met my wife.
That is truly amazing. I did not know that about you and Emily. That is amazing. I don't have any words. That's so amazing. I'm amazed.
Yeah, it was a fun time. I went into it thinking like, oh, this will be a fun bucket list kind of experience, and then it was more than a bucket list. It was really awesome. So all
You
that
have
to
a whole
say,
family from that. The only thing I know about
yeah,
speed dating is I watched an episode of Psych that included
yeah.
speed dating, and that's all I know about it.
It's not too dissimilar from that, except for in my context, it was actually Loma Linda University Church that was hosting it. And so there was at least a certain level of like, hey, if you're looking for a partner with some shared values, this is a great place to get started. And it was, that evening, I think I had maybe like 15, 20 or so speed dates. And, some of them were interesting characters. I remember hearing one guy kind of who was sitting next to me. He opened with a particular question, which maybe in hindsight is not the best question to open with, but his opening line was, if you could have any superhero power, what would it be? And when you have 5 minutes, maybe it's time better spent on some more meaningful interaction. I don't know, but it worked out for us. And I've actually met several people over the years who have also gotten married because of speed dating. So it's kind of cool.
Okay, let's have a speed dating revival. And I mean, apparently God is in favor of some version of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So One of the questions I have here in this story is because things happen so fast, and people are usually asking like, "Why? What's happening? What's going on in kind of in your mind, in your heart?" When we get to share our story of our speed dating, people are always like, "Well, what did this all mean to you, and like what would make you kind of move so quickly?" And that's actually kind of where I would love to start with this story. You have a servant who's looking for some indicator that this would be a good partner for his master's son. And he asks something very specific. It's kind of just very peculiar. Like if you water the camels, like it's just okay. Like I feel like I'm missing something there. And then on the other side of the equation, you see this young lady who's single and available, and yet she's willing to leave her entire family and go marry someone that she's never met before. So I'm just kind of wondering what's happening here in this passage. What are kind of the social norms of the day that maybe would help color in the spaces that we're missing?
Those are great questions, and their context is very far removed from our own speed dating or slow dating context, to be sure. When you're sitting across the table from Emily at this
Hmm.
speed dating event, you've got 5 minutes to kind of, I don't know, what are you looking for? You're looking for a vibe or chemistry, or you're looking for, is the conversation flow easily? You're looking for something like an emotional, psychological connection, and given the context, you're hoping for some shared life values,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
that's kind of what we're going for here in modern romance is we're like, can we build a life together? Do we share enough in common that we can build a life together? And then do we have a romantic connection? We're looking for an emotional, psychological connection. We're looking
Hmm.
for some thrill. We want a little dopamine hit when we see them. We want those kinds of things. Isaac and Rebecca, Abraham, the servant, the whole family, the scheme here, did not care so much about that romantic connection part. And we can tell because she's like, yes, I will marry him. What was his name again?
Right. Oh man, that's such a bizarre sentence to say, right?
Yeah, like, she didn't see a picture. I'm certain of
Hmm.
that. Like, didn't bring back a pencil sketch of Isaac's face or anything. So what does she know before she meets him? Well, importantly, she knows that he is from the same tribe, basically,
Hmm.
like the same ethnic group. That was important to Abraham. And one of the things that was tied to that was because they were worshipers of the Lord.
Hmm.
So you notice that Laban, Rebecca's brother, comes out to the servant and greets him by saying, "Come, you who are blessed by the Lord," in verse
Hmm.
31. And so that and he praises the Lord in front of Rebecca. He praises the Lord in front of the family. He explains that it's the Lord, which Yahweh has blessed his master Abraham and blessed him
Hmm.
with this child and made this promise to him. So knowledge of Yahweh and worship of the Lord is crucial. That's, I imagine, chief among the reasons why Abraham said to the servant, "Do not let my son marry somebody who doesn't worship the Lord, and don't send him away from this land that God has promised us." So he needs the best of both worlds. Keep my son
Hmm.
in the land that God has promised to give to us, but also he can't marry into these people who aren't going to worship Yahweh as the one true God. So go
Hmm.
back to these people. And the book of Genesis in chapter 11 gave us some background about how all these people are related and everything, and that they know the Lord. They were following the Lord
Hmm.
to get from where they were to where they are now. So anyway, so they have that shared values. It's kind of like, you know, if you were going to be on an online dating profile, you're going to put Yahweh in your religious affiliation,
There you
you
go.
know. And so that was like, okay, Yahweh, Yahweh. Okay, we get that. Um and we also know that what she knows about him is he's financially secure, to
Yeah, he's
put
doing
it.
all right. He's
Yeah.
got more than one camel.
He has many camels. He can just throw a nose ring your way, couple bracelets, no problem,
Here's
you
your
know?
tip. He flicks a ring towards her.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the gift that the servant gives her, and that's a signal to say, "Hey,
Hmm.
thank you for your hospitality, and also I'm kinda just letting you know, like, there's more where that came from. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
He gives
Okay.
gifts to the family. The servant gives gifts to the family, to her brother, to her mother, to her. He's saying, he's trying to communicate, Rebecca is a prize, like she's a
Mm,
treasure. So I'm going to
mm.
give you treasures in exchange for her. And also, you can trust that you're sending her to a situation where she's not going to be in lack.
Hmm. It seems intensely practical. Like you want someone to be able to take care of you, or if this is your little girl, kind of an idea, you want someone that's going to be able to take care of her, kind of thing. But I feel like on like a more modern approach to this story, it feels somewhat insulting that you would be so shallow. I think would be kind of the term, or a gold digger. This kind of an idea that your relationships would be so much more than just about financial arrangements or things like that. And it's just so interesting because it seems like the way that marital kind of relationships were designed, or not designed, but the way that they were practiced in these times is very different than the way that we approach them now. And so maybe there's, I don't know, like so people always talk about, oh, this is the biblical model of fill in the blank. And it just seems like when it comes to the quote unquote biblical model of relationships, it's like, well, how far do we take that? And like, how do we actually apply this to our individual lived out experiences?
Yeah. Yeah, the biblical model, we have to be super way more careful with that than we usually are, because the Bible describes a lot of things that it's not necessarily prescribing,
Hmm.
like, is this the only way to find a wife? Like, what about all the people that didn't have like extra camels and like a whole collaboration of servants that are willing to travel hundreds of miles? Like, anyway. So, what I do think we see in here is it is intensely practical. And maybe in our modern context, what we do see that Rebecca, when she makes the choice, because they ask her, will you go with this man? And
Hmm.
she says, I will go. Why she's making this choice, why the family is willing to give their blessing to this union, I don't think is just because he has a lot of bank. But in our context, is it like, well, you have to have so much in your bank account and you should drive this certain amount, like the certain kind of car, and you should already own a home and all that kind of thing. And of course, our financial situation is so much different, but we might be looking more for the character qualities
Hmm.
that
Mhm.
are going to lead to security. Um, Something that is interesting to me when I read this story, thinking about romance, but also just thinking about life choices in general,
Hmm.
is the servant is going to say, he frames his whole mission to himself, and as he's talking to the Lord and talking to other people about it, he frames this as, hey, God made a promise to my boss Abraham,
Mhm.
and so this is the next step in that promise. Like, God made a very practical promise. It wasn't, I mean, it was like, you're going to have a family with lots and lots of descendants, and one day they will inhabit this land. God gave the miracle child in Isaac. If Isaac doesn't get married, what happens to this promise?
Yeah.
Dead
Well,
end,
seemingly, yeah, dead end, right?
right? You're just like, okay, well, that was confusing that you would do all that. So he frames all of this in terms of God's kindness. And yet, um, it's not like God just, materializes some bride from the sky. It's
Mhm.
like there are real people and histories. There's direction from God. I mean, the servant is praying, lead me in this way. And then he sees God's leadership, like leading him on this road and directing him to
Hmm.
Rebecca and connecting them. And he sees that as God's leading and providence. So God directs and makes a way, but there's still the choice of the family and still the choice of Rebecca.
Hmm.
And so there's both direction from God
Mhm.
and choice. Like those things
Yeah.
interplay in this romance story. And I think in our lives and so many decisions that we make.
One
What do
thing
you
that I
think?
appreciate about this narrative is how specific the prayer of the servant was. Like his response or his prayer was this: "Please give me a. This is my request. I will ask one of them. Please give me a drink from your jug." If she says yes, have a drink, and I will water your camels too. Let her be the one that you selected as Isaac's wife. Like it was a very specific prayer request, and the way that I look at it is, sometimes when it comes to romantic partnerships, we might feel maybe a little bit bashful about asking for specific things, but it seems like God's willing to enter into that arrangement. Like he's willing to honor the specificity of a prayer, even if it's kind of like bizarre or maybe very particular. I like that the servant just like this is the frame of mind that he has. That when I ask God for something specific, he'll answer. Like, and sometimes the answer will be no. And Abraham leaves space for that. Like, hey, if you can't find someone that fits this criteria, we saw in the previous episode, then don't worry about it. Like, it's no big deal. We'll find another way to do it. Like, you're off the hook. And still, like, hey, here's this very specific way you're gonna know that God is answering your prayer.
And why do you think? I mean, why did he want this particular sign? Do you think to water all these camels?
The thing that I always heard in kind of like youth group kind of an idea was that it would be an indicator that the woman was very hardworking, and it like her watering all these camels. And they would always do this like illustration where you would ask how much does a typical camel drink and how much does the jar hold, and like the point was be like she's working for 10 hours to water the camels. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, like if that's actually what happened, but the idea that my teachers would try and communicate was that the woman was hardworking. It was an indicator of character. And so I
Yeah.
don't know. That's the best that I have for that. But is there more than that, or do you think that there's truth to this idea that it's just a demonstration of her willingness to go out of her way to serve? But then what does that mean for the kinds of people who would label themselves as quote unquote people pleasers, where they're like they see this story and they're like, yeah, I want to be like her, and then end up like getting trampled across because they're out there serving everyone that they never take care of themselves.
Ooh, yeah. Well, it does show she's a hard worker. I mean, these jars were definitely made out of heavy things, and especially when you fill them with water. So there's a lot going on. I think also she probably had some help. I don't think
Hmm.
Rebecca was literally
Just by
alone at
herself.
this well. Like she has maids and stuff. The Bible tells us that. So she's probably directing other people. She's sort of leading the group that is doing this.
Oh.
But at before she does this, she doesn't know that this guy's going to give her, like he ends up giving her a nose ring and bracelets and all that stuff. But she's
Mhm.
just helping a stranger, right?
Hmm.
So she is hardworking, she's being hospitable. It is demonstrating exceptional character. Like we're gonna put our own agenda on pause to make sure you're taken care of.
Hmm.
So I think that does speak well of her character. So, but yeah, I mean, so I'm thinking about what kinds of things are we quote unquote allowed to ask God for in our romantic partners, and how long is our list allowed to be? Like, even just mathematically, can I put like must be over 5'5", needs
Right.
to make $60,000 a year, like what's allowed, like,
That was absolutely me before. Like, just even like we reflect on this, Emily and I reflect on this, that like if we had met maybe even just 6 to 12 months prior to when we had met, we would have felt like we were completely incompatible. Because at the time, I had the long list of things that I was looking for in a potential partner. And I think one of the greatest miracles that God did wasn't that he provided me with someone who matched all the characteristics that I was looking for. I think that one of the greatest miracles was that God helped me to pare down and refine my list of things that actually mattered rather than superficial things that I thought that I actually needed. And one of the reasons why, in my experience, it was so hard to find a partner who had the list was because my list was entirely unreasonable and that God had something different and maybe even better for me than what my list was.
yeah. And I think our lists, can be so, I don't know. They can be unrealistic in part because we just start thinking of like our ideal person, like great sense of humor, like I get along with their family.
Yeah.
We both, are bilingual. We want to raise our kids with Montessori. And we get so so specific. But then you can get in a relationship with a person like that, and then be like, this person is a not nice person,
Hmm.
like hilarious. And yes, 5'11" and makes a good income and his mom is nice. And also he keeps chewing in the same room as me and I can't stand it anymore. Like I think there's great, great wisdom in paring it down to the essentials,
Hmm.
and that those things really are more about um building a life together and living in harmony and peace together, with
Hmm.
the Lord. I don't know, what advice are you going to give people, cuz you pared down your list. You got you
Yeah.
a treasure of a wife. So what stayed on the list, or what kinds of things should stay on the list?
You know, my list went from, I don't know, let's call it like effectively 20 different things, right? Like I want someone who has a shared hobby with me. I want someone who matches me personality wise. I want someone who's willing to travel and adventure and do all the things that I like doing. It would be great if we had, similar preferences in food and, music and all the different things, right? And it wasn't just superficial things too. I wanted someone who had the same background in their church experience as I did. I wanted someone who was interested in serving the Lord in the same way that I was serving the Lord. Like, and so it wasn't all superficial things. But the thing that it pared down to, and I want to say it was literally one thing, was what stayed on the list. And I wanted someone who had a willingness to follow God wherever He called them. That to me was the one thing that I was looking for. And Emily, it's funny because I think this is largely true. Emily and I have nearly nothing in common. Like when you think about the list that I was looking for, we have very little in common. And yet, one thing that has been consistent in our journey is that Emily has been willing to follow God wherever He calls her. And that to me is like such a simple, distilled down thing, and yet it has made our lives so happy because we're on the same page as far as that's concerned. And I don't know, like, is my experience strong enough that I would recommend that to other people? Like, yeah, your list should be one thing and one thing only. Well, when I was younger, yes, I absolutely made that point to some of my friends who were asking for advice. And hopefully, I've matured a little bit. Maybe I'll second guess if I say that broadly, especially on a podcast like this. Like everyone that's listening, I don't know, but I think there's something to it. Simplifying the list, because I've realized how much I've grown and changed over the years, how much she's grown and changed over the years, and who we started off dating was very different than who we are today. And so I think that principle for me has been one of the keys to our success. And even though we don't share very many hobbies, if at all any, we're happy. And our life has been an enjoyable one thus far. And God willing, will be for many, many more years to come.
Yes, I love that. And I see parallels here with this exact narrative we're looking at here.
Hmm.
Like Isaac, Abraham, the servant, they did not have a super long list. I don't think Rebecca did either, but on the things that really mattered about what they were going to share in common and their love of the Lord and their worship of the Lord, their dedication to the Lord. That's what they built this family on. And Isaac and Rebecca have a beautiful love story. I feel like they don't get the props they deserve.
They fell in
But
love by the end of this chapter.
they
Right?
did. They did fall
Yeah,
in
it
love.
wasn't just a kind of a strategic alignment, but there was love here too. He
Yeah,
loved
there
her
was.
deeply, is what the scripture says.
Yeah, he loved her deeply, and I think that is beautiful. And so the encouragement I get out of this text is that that God does care about these things, and
Hmm.
that ultimately this combination of God's direction and our choice is maybe like mysterious to us about where
Mm.
one stops and the other begins and all of that kind of thing. But we can trust him with it, whatever it
Mm.
is. Like even Abraham was willing to say, like you said, you know what? If you go and you don't find someone, like, okay, you're out of the oath. God is still going to fulfill his promise. And I take great courage in that. Like, I'm not looking for love. I've been happily married for quite a long time. But there's still things in my life that I'm like, God, you make a way. And he does. He does make a way.
So, in the last couple of years, there have been a lot of kind of re-examining the traditional Christian dating advice. If you're on that section of Twitter, you know that there's a lot of these books like I Kiss Dating Goodbye that maybe our generation has kind of been reared by. And so there's a lot of question as to what is good advice when it comes from the quote unquote Christian or quote unquote biblical worldview for those who are in this season of life. And it's hard to know to recommend a book or not. But there is someone that's worth noting that we wanted to share with you guys today.
Yes, I have read quite a few books, been to seminars and all kinds of things on relationship. There are some good resources out there. There are also many that make me roll my eyes. But I will tell you a resource that has been really valuable for me across my years of romance and relationship with my husband. And it's the Gottman Institute. So John Gottman and Julie Gottman, and they've got trainings and resources and all that. And specifically, this book is a really good primer, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I feel like each one of these chapters is just like a master class in some relationship dynamics. So if you want to know, for instance, like the 4 things that are likely, they're guaranteed to kill your relationship over time, he'll let you know what they are. Anyway, I love to follow them on Instagram at the Gottman Institute. But they have so many books, resources, and they do challenges and videos and all sorts of things. But I love this book. I love John and Julie Gottman. It's a nice research-based thing, and it avoids most of the stereotyping that the average book on dating that you can find at a bookstore tends to fall into. That's kind of the easy reach. So I really appreciate John and Julie Gottman, this book, and the Gottman Institute.
Something I've appreciated about Gottman, and maybe this story is somewhat apocryphal, I think it's based on reality, is that, he would do research-based kind of clinical approaches to studying relationships that work and don't work. And I remember hearing someone describe that he would be able to spend something like 5 minutes with a couple and based off of a certain list of criteria, predict with like 80% kind of success whether or not this couple would end up. It's higher. Okay, I see you pointing up. So maybe 80, I don't know what the number is, but he'd be able to predict that this couple would stay married or end up divorced within just a couple of minutes of observing them interacting with each other. What's the actual number? Do you know what the number was?
It's over 90% actually.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and so it is research based. This is actually what got me onto it because I would read or be exposed to the typical stuff in church and it blesses people. So I'm not gonna like harsh on it too much because it is useful for some people. But I will just say it didn't work for me. It wasn't connecting with me and my dynamics with my husband, and we just weren't fitting in those gender roles in the way that people were talking about them. And then I took a class in communication research from a professor, and she mentioned John Gottman. She had done her PhD work with him, and she talked about being in the lab, and they would put sensors on people, and they observed couples in an apartment in the lab, and they have them have conversations on various things, and so they would check things, for instance, on someone makes a harsh comment to their partner. Does their heart rate and body, does their physiological arousal of like anger, does that start just before they say the comment? Does it start as they are starting to say the comment, or does it start after they say the comment? Meanwhile, they're checking the partner. Does their arousal toward anger or defensive start before, during, or after hearing the comment? And they're really trying to hone in on this. So that's why he can predict with
What's
such
the difference
accuracy.
as to when the heart rate changes?
Well, one of the things you might find out from that question, for instance, is what is the reaction time between feeling angry and saying the angry thing? What happens if that's a longer time or a shorter time? Or what if you say something and then you see your reaction, the defensive reaction on your partner's face, and that's what makes you feel angry? All those teeny tiny things. Yeah, they add up to make a difference. And one of the most important things I've learned from the Gottmans is that relationships are not the big things that we think. They're not the sweeping gestures. They're not the big disappointments or big mistakes or big wins, big gifts. It's actually all in the very small offers and responses that we give each other in romance, in work relationships, in friendships, in family relationships. That's where relationships grow or wither, and that's where we need to be paying attention.
Wow. If you're interested, which I now am, I've never looked at the book. I might have to pick up the book. The book is called 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, a practical guide from the country's foremost relationship expert. That's John M. Gottman, PhD, and Nan Silver. Check them out on Audible. There'll be a link in the show notes or the description if you want to check out the book.